Hey there, welcome to this episode of Author Success Show. The special guest we have today is Chandler Bolt. If you want to learn how to go from a blank page to 10,000 copies of your book sold, then this episode is for you. Chandler is an investor, the CEO of Self-Publishing School and selfpublishing.com, and he's the author of 7 best-selling books, including his most recent book, Published. Self-Publishing School is an Inc. 5000 company for the last 3 years in a row. Chandler is also the host of the 7-Figure Principles podcast and the Self-Publishing School podcast. Through his books, podcasts, YouTube channels, and Self-Publishing School, he has helped thousands of people write a book that grows their income, impact, and business. Hey, Chandler, welcome to Author Success Show.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, Chandler. Very few authors come back to our show again. So it's a pleasure to have you again because now we are celebrating the relaunch of Published.
Yeah, it's exciting. So it's funny, you're just talking right before we got. So I think the first time I was on, we were talking about the first launch, and then which was 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago. And then now this book just came out. So kind of a fun full circle moment.
Absolutely, Chandler. See, I have been following your work for about 8 years now, ever since you started SPS, Self-Publishing School. So I know the amount of knowledge and wisdom you have, which you constantly keep sharing through your podcasts and everything. So you could easily write another book on a completely different topic. So why did you choose to relaunch Published?
Yeah, I went back and read it, and I feel like we've helped publish about 6,000 books over the last 7 years. I think what you count for at least 1 or 2 of those. And we've learned a lot. Our curriculum's evolved, like the things that we teach has continued to improve and grow. And I just looked in the book really hadn't, right? I published it early on in 2016, which was kind of when we were first getting started. And I said, you know what, we can make everything else has gotten better except this book. And I need to make this book better. And I want to drop the mic with this book, make this the definitive book for people who are thinking about writing and publishing a book. So there's kind of that. And then the second, that was, and I talk about this in, I want to say it's chapter 2. I don't know if people can see the video version of this, but it's kind of like defining your why for your reader and then for yourself as the author. So that's for the reader, that was the purpose. And then for me as the author, there were so many resources that we have where I felt like we've gotten better at turning readers into subscribers and paying customers. And for example, when I launched the first version, we didn't even have a sales team. So nowhere in the book does it say, hey, book a call with the team to talk about. So little things like that I felt like, hey, I'll make a better book. And my goal is, the first edition has generated millions of dollars in sales for Self-Publishing School. I think the second edition will generate tens of millions of dollars over the next few years by just being more strategic and creating more templates and just a bunch of stuff to kind of parlay into Self-Publishing School a little bit better. And so we've been more strategic with the actual way that the book is structured to drive lead sales and referrals for the business.
Fantastic. I also feel, Chandler, that you have been so focused about improving everything about Self-Publishing School, the process, the teachings, the whole approach of SPS is getting better year on year. And because you're so focused on that, you're not looking at what is the next new business I can start. You're completely dedicated to this one thing. And I think that's a huge message to all the entrepreneurs out there. They don't have to write a new book every year. If they're so good at improving that one thing, they can keep doing relaunches, which could be very successful. And one new thing I loved about your new launch is the cool Airbnb giveaway that you did. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. And I appreciate you recognizing and mention that. It's one of my, I forget who I heard this from and learned this from, but FOCUS stands for follow one course until successful, right? And I believe that 2 of the most dangerous questions as an entrepreneur and really as an author as well is what's new and what's next. It can be so tempting to jump to the next book, to jump to the next business instead of doubling down in marketing the thing that we have, the book that we have, or the business that we have, right? And so the giveaway was just kind of a fun new test that I wanted to try And so my brother runs a company called Bolt Farm Tree Houses. They have kind of like these luxury romantic tree houses and domes. They've been on a Netflix show and a bunch of other stuff about their business.
Right.
So I said, hey, let's support my brother and do something here, while also it's an unforgettable experience for the reader. And it was sparked by a conversation. I want to say it was Jordan Rayner, who I've had on the self-publishing school. I think I had him. Maybe I was just on his podcast. But he was telling me, he said, pre-order bonuses, they can work, but they're also kind of confusing. And he said, I just figured I just do a giveaway, and because it's just so easy to understand. And so I said, hey, I want to try that. And I gave it a try. It worked pretty well. It sparked a lot of publicity, and it brought in book sales. It brought in reviews. It brought in customers for self-publishing schools. So it was kind of a win-win-win all around.
Yeah, it's such a cool thing. And it doesn't have to be boring, right? Like just giving away something very basic. People can just come up with something innovative. They may not have a beautiful Airbnb to give away, but they could have something which they may not recognize as something special, but they could just create a giveaway around that.
Yeah, no doubt.
So this time around, I also realized, Chandler, that you've started focusing a lot on the audiobook version. You've been giving away free credits. You've been getting some fantastic reviews on the audiobook. So have you seen some change in the trend that people are loving audiobooks more, which is why you want to promote that? Or is there any other strategy behind focusing on the audiobook as much as you're focused on the physical book?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think we've still got work to do. There's really two things that drove that. Number one, I think the first time I launched the book, I didn't focus enough on the audiobook and market it as a standalone product. And so therefore the audiobook didn't do as well. And I think that was a big mistake, because so there's that. And then I think secondly, there's trends moving in that direction. I think more people are listening to audiobooks and more people they're listening to podcasts, audiobooks, like audio content. It's being built into cars. It's being built into, like, there's things that are kind of trending towards audio as a content medium, Alexa, Google, that sort of thing as well. And so I think we're moving towards that medium, and I want to be on that medium. And it kind of makes sense with me having the Self-Publishing School podcast. There's a direct correlation, I think, at least that's the hypothesis, is that people who listen to podcasts are likely to listen to audiobooks. And so I can get listeners of the book to subscribe to the podcast, and listeners of the podcast to purchase the book is kind of the goal there. And then really, I believe that an audiobook is more likely to get listened to, so the content consumed, and it builds a relationship with me and with Self-Publishing School as a whole, deeper than just the physical book. I think the physical book is a good experience, but you build a deeper relationship with the author, and you feel like you know them when you listen to them through the audiobook. So those are kind of a bunch of the reasons behind it. Again, I think we've had some good early progress, but we need to focus on it more. Two things that I've done that's worked well that might be helpful for people. One is just making it easy for people to get the book. And so we have, I have a link. It's publishedbook.com/audible. And so anyone can do this, whatever your URL is, / in my case, I did Audible. And because that's basically that takes them to the Audible page. And if they don't have an Audible account, they can get the book for free. If they just do a trial. Right. And they don't have to pay any money. They just do a trial and they can get the book for free. And then if they do have an Audible account, they can just use a credit. Right. So either way, it takes them to where they can get the book for free. And that's where I was at. That's one thing that's actually really surprising to me, is how many people don't have an Audible account. I just thought everyone did. I'm like, I listen to audiobooks all the time. Like, I thought everyone did. And I remember being in a car with my brother, his wife, and a few people in our family. And I was just talking about how I'm like, man, we're really having trouble getting as many reviews on the audiobook. We're getting a ton of reviews on the physical book, but the audiobook, like, we're just not getting as many reviews. And I'm trying to figure out why. And I think it's because not that many people like have Audible. And that was a big surprise to me. And I just surveyed the car. And I think I was the only person in the whole car who had the Audible app. And these are people who they read books, right? But it's just like they don't have it. And so that was just so shocking to me. And that's been a lesson or takeaway. And so I think having an easy link is one thing that's worked. And then the second thing, which is what you mentioned, is giving away codes for free. I mean, that's been, when you publish on Audible, they give you 25 codes. And if you give them out, they'll give you 25 more. And in the past, I don't know if they've cut down on this, but I've had success with just continually getting more codes. And so I've been using that to say, hey, it's a value add. Like, let me hook a bunch of people up with a book, and I'm that's a value add to them. And then hopefully they'll listen to the book, they'll leave a review, that sort of thing. So reviews are slowly climbing. I just checked this morning, we're at 130.
Amazing.
And so the goal is to get that in the hundreds and really past 1,000 so that we get some critical mass on the audiobook platform.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing these, no money required marketing tips for promoting the audiobook. One thing
scrappiness is the one-on-one outreach. It never stops.
So true. One thing that I notice a lot of authors tell me, Chandler, when I tell them that, hey, you should have your audiobook, they tell me that, oh my God, that's going to be a lot of work. Can you help me get a narrator? And I tell them, no, ideally you should be narrating it yourself, unless like you have a very difficult accent that your target audience cannot understand. Please go ahead and do it yourself. And when I listen to your audiobooks, it just feels like you're having a great conversation with me. So good. Can you share a couple of tips to authors who should be narrating their own books?
That's cool. I appreciate you saying that. I think, I'm kind of more in your camp now. In the beginning, and I think this is partially because it was easier. I had other people narrate the books. It's easier in some ways, cheaper. To have other people narrate the books is that kind of surprises people. I mean, you can do it truly DIY, but you want to make sure that it's quality. So you're probably gonna have to pay someone to do it right. And so originally I had people record it for me, and now sure, maybe it's different if you're doing fiction, but if you're trying to build a brand and a business using a book, I think you need to read the audiobook. And yes, it's a lot of work. But you're going to maximize. Here's a good thing. You're going to maximize your royalties because people buy books differently. Right. And when you have your book available in all three formats, well, now all of a sudden people will buy the book and listen to the book who never would have read the book. So you're opening yourself up to a new audience. You also allow people to now buy multiple versions. And yes, people actually do that. I've done it.
I do that, Chandler. I know recently I bought a book in all the three versions. That's crazy. I usually buy the physical and the audiobook together because I like to listen to the author's voice while I'm reading the book so that I don't get distracted. And I noticed this time that the book is going to reach my home in India a month later. So I could not wait. So I also bought the Kindle edition. So that was crazy.
Exactly. Yeah, that's super smart. And I know some people who it's actually a faster way to read the book because they can do the Audible version on 2 or even 3x speed, but they're looking at it. And so they're actually comprehending it. And so some people do that. And so, but you're going to sell more copies, like all those things. So I think you should do it. Yes, it's going to take time. It gives you an excuse to relaunch the book. I talk about this in, chapter number 15 or something, I think. Chapter 21, which is treating your different versions of the book as a relaunch. And so it gives all those things, right? But then tips on how to do it. I mean, you need to hire a professional to master it. I think that's really important. And then you can record it yourself, either at home or in a studio. I'd like to go, it depends on, I talk about this in the book too. It's like, do you have more time or money? Well, whichever one you have more of, spend that to save the other one. So either you're spending money to save time or you're spending time to save money. And so for me, it was spending money to save time. And so I went in a studio and got it done and then paid someone to master it and that sort of thing. For some people, So that's kind of how to do the process.
And what do you do to make sure that it sounds energetic? Because some people read it as if they're reading some news bulletin, but you read it like you're actually talking, right? So any tips to make it sound better?
I mean, that's tough. I like to think of, similar to how I record videos, I like to think of a person and like I'm having a conversation. And so I think the one tip I would give is think about the ideal customer.
Right.
or the ideal reader, and imagine the whole time that you're having a conversation with them. And I think
Mm.
that can really help. Other things is you can start with, if it helps you to get warmed up, you can start with content you're more familiar with or story based stuff. I know the first time I recorded my audiobook, there was a really compelling story at the end. And by the time I got there and told that story, it really just broke things loose for me mentally. And
Mhm.
then I just kept rolling. And now this is so much better. And
Right.
so another tip I would give to people is to start with either content you're more familiar with
Mm.
or maybe a story that's compelling. And you can even just scrap that. And maybe that helps too, is like, hey, I'm just going to kind of clear my throat a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to cover this one specific chapter or content. And then that's going to help me get momentum. And then
Mm.
there's a bunch of other random things. I mean, don't beat yourself up in the process. I'd like to stand up. And so
Mm.
that I have energy and that's
And that's
consistent.
what you do with even normal conversations, right?
Yeah.
Meetings
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
You
I
never
like to
sit
stand up
down.
for conversations because it's an easier way to introduce
Mm.
standing up in your day. I mean, first off, but then also it just your energy level is better and more consistent. And
Right.
so little things like that, I think work can help a lot.
Sure. So one thing that I also tell authors is if they have a business, then there has to be a way to connect their book to their business. And you have done that brilliantly. And you keep
Mm.
giving away a lot of free content. There is this book which is almost, it's hardly $10 or $20, and you have ways where people can get it for free. And you also
Mhm.
go on podcasts. You have your own shows as well.
Yeah.
So there is so much of so many ways where people can enter your universe for free. But how do you actually handhold these people and make them join your programs, your self-publishing school, which are at a much higher dollar value? So could you just show how does your author funnel really work like?
Yeah. I think it's so I mean, it starts with giving away, it's a fundamental belief I have is give away your best stuff for free and people will pay you to tell it to them again, or
Hmm.
they'll pay you to do it for them.
Yeah.
Right. And so it starts with just for us, it's making everything that we have like as valuable as possible up front. And
Mm.
so for me, that starts with the book in a lot of ways. But then it starts with the ascension of content or value from there, right? And so I looked at, and especially with the second edition, I looked at, all right, how do I make this as valuable as possible, the book itself, and then
Mm.
how do I make as valuable as possible supplemental resources where people will say, oh man, I'm definitely going to give my contact information for that,
Mm.
and then I also make it clear who we're fit to work with, who are not fit to work with, and then there's kind of just direct ascension there, and so people know like, hey, here's a resource. And then when they download the resource, we say, hey, if you're serious
Mm.
about this and you want our help, book a call with my team at Self Publishing School. We'd
Mhm.
love to chat with you, map out a plan for your book and help you get started and that sort of thing. And so just making that clear. And then we have a ton of people who they consume our free content on Self Publishing School, selfpublishing.com, or this book. And they'll never work with us, and that's cool.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why I rewrote this book is
Mm.
I had a bunch of people come up to me and it just kept popping up in my life where people said, oh, I read your book
Mm.
published and I published a book. I didn't even work with Self-Publishing School. And I'm like, man, this is making such a bigger impact
Yeah.
than I thought. And so let me make this book better. And that's going to exponentially increase our impact, whether people work with us at Self-Publishing School or not.
Right. I just love that mindset, Chandler, where you're not really worried about how many people are going to join the self-publishing school because of all these efforts. You're absolutely fine with people benefiting for free, but you know that the people who are meant to work with you will eventually definitely come back.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Right. So the other thing I want to ask you is about the way you've been growing the business. So the first time when I heard about SPS, I think you used to do these sales calls yourself, and now you have a huge team. So I'm also striving to move from 6 figures to 7 figures, and you have a multi 7 figure business, Chandler. So what are some of the things that you're doing differently now as compared to what you were doing 5 years ago, which has resulted in this massive success that you are having right now in your
Mm.
business?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a lot of parallels to being successful as an author and being successful in business.
Mhm.
There's some things that I think we're getting back to the basics. That's a lot. That's a lot of it, is get back to the basics and make things more simple and do more of what's working. Right. And so I think in the early days, we were extremely focused on the customer because I was in the trenches with the customer. Right.
Yeah.
And then I think somewhere along the way, we got lost in the growth and like, all right, we got to grow. We got to grow. We got to grow. We lost touch with the customer. We stopped putting the customer first. And so I think in a lot of ways over the last 12 to 18 months, that's been a huge part of it is, hey, we live and die by our students' results. Like that is the most important thing at the front of the business. And we need to make sure it's at the front of the business, and that drives everything else. And so focusing back to that, which has led to us rolling out more products, rolling out services like formatting, cover design, bunch of stuff like that. And just saying, all right, how can we better serve our students? And just keep going back to that. So that's one big thing. And then second piece is, I would say, is just bringing leverage to what you're doing by creating assets. In the book, I talk about, I want to say it's, here it is. Chapter 22. It's the 1-year launch. So I think one of the biggest mistakes authors make is they treat their book as a 1-week window where they launch, and really instead you should market your book for at least a year. And that's what I call the 1-year launch. Right. But part of that is going from one-off promos to evergreen assets. And that's where, that's what I focus on doing. I'm focused on doing right now with this book. But then this book is an evergreen asset within the business to grow the business. Right. And so I think of how do I do more of that, and how do we as a team do more of that, is spending time to create assets that will then continue to help our customers or continue to help prospects and bring people into self-publishing school and that sort of thing for years or decades to come. And so that I'm not running on a hamster wheel of promotion that's only going to bring in this month's customers. Right. And so trying to do a whole lot more of that. And as we continue to stack that, that'll help us. That's a flywheel that'll help us just grow faster and faster.
Right. Such good advice, Chandler. So there is, as you said, there is a lot of commonalities between an author and an entrepreneur. So one reason why an aspiring author never becomes a published author is because they try to do everything themselves. And that's probably why a lot of startup entrepreneurs never make it big, because they keep doing everything themselves. So in your book, or even in your future books, what are some things that you will always do, and what are some things that you will never do? And once you talk about that, we'll also, I personally want to know, in your business currently, what are the few things that you continue doing, but a few things that you will never do again on your own?
Yeah, that's a great question. As far as the book goes, I mean, the never do list for me is formatting the book. And I want to pay an expert to do that. And the never do list is, gosh, what else would it be? It's not a very long list. But I mean, I want to pay experts to do editing. I want to pay experts to do cover design, formatting, like a bunch of those things. I definitely want to pay people to help. It doesn't mean I won't be involved, but I want to pay people to help. And then I'd say the thing that I'll always do is be involved in the marketing of the book. And you got to be your biggest advocate and marketer of the work that you create and the book that you create. And then the cover design and that whole process. I mean, that's so important. And so I'm really involved in that, and I want to make sure that it's great. And so those are kind of the two big things. And I guess on the never outsource list for me is ghostwriting the book. Just for me personally, because I think it just makes for a worse book. So is it a lot more of my time? Absolutely. But is it worth it? Yes. Now I get help with the writing. And we've had people in our community or on staff that are very familiar with our stuff that will help with some of the heavy lifting of either outlining, editing, or creating some of the draft content. I'll get help on that, but just fully ghostwriting, just not for me personally. And then on the business side of things, I mean, one of the first things that I did was pull myself out of the day-to-day coaching. First thing was customer support. And then the second thing was the day-to-day coaching. Those are just two areas that I didn't feel like I could add the highest and best value. I was pretty hard on people as a coach. I think I made people cry.
You mean your clients?
Yeah. I was just kind of pretty tough on people. Like, hey, what are you doing? You need to get this done. Like, let's
Right.
go. No
But
matter
not
the next time
everybody
we
is Chandler
talk, you need to
Bolt.
make progress. What's
Yeah.
that?
Not everybody is Chandler, to be super focused and, doing all the
Yeah.
heavy lifting.
When I realized that, and so now we've got coaches that are much better than I am or was, and some people need that, some people don't, right? And so, but getting out of customer support and getting out of coaching, but this is we'll continue to be involved in, is staying connected to the customer. So I do a group coaching call every single week. I've done it for years. I will continue to do it. And that's one thing that when you do like a pure analysis of my time, it's like, hold up, Chandler, why are you doing this? Like, it's not what someone would say like, oh, this is not your highest, best use of your time, but it's the way that I stay connected to customers. And it's the way that I understand what's going on in the business on the front lines with our students. And I just like it. It's fun and it's re-energizing of like, okay, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Cause I think kind of that middle point that I mentioned along the way, you just get so caught up in the data and the numbers that you forget the humans that you're helping. And so that's just a great way for me to stay connected with that and not be disconnected. And so creating some of the basic curriculum and videos and stuff is something I'll always be involved in. And sales and marketing, that's something I'll always be involved with because I love that as well.
Great. So from your initial days, Chandler, to now, have you seen your purpose as an entrepreneur also evolve? Because I'm sure initially, it's nice to get driven by the targets and the money and all that, but I see you have laser focus on your numbers even today. But I'm sure there is a bigger purpose behind that. So has anything changed over the years for you in terms of your mission and purpose?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, the big, I tell the story at the very end of the book, is the big jumping off point was my friend Kendall passing away. And that gave a lot of meaning to what I'm doing at self-publishing school and really kickstarted why I decided to double down on what we're doing. And so that's always been a big driver. I guess I shouldn't say always. That was from the early part, that was like a jumping off point for me and for self-publishing school and connecting to why I do what I do. And then it's continued to evolve. Like as we've continued to gain momentum, I see, hey, books change lives. Like books change the lives of readers. They change the lives of authors. And I've seen that as a reader. I read about a book a week. Like my life has been changed by reading books consistently. And then as an author, I've seen that as well. And so just continually reconnecting to that purpose, I see that. And I see the change that we're creating in our students. I see the change that this business is creating with our employees, with our team, with the offshoots and like the nonprofit work that we're able to do. And so there's just a bunch of things that kind of reconnect my purpose and passion. And that continues to grow and evolve and will continue to grow and evolve. And as we, create better products and get better at helping people publish great books. And so that it continues to grow and evolve, but I don't have to work at this point, but I love doing it. And we got big goals and we're on a mission to publish 100,000 books by 2035. So we've published about 6,000 in the last 7 years. Wow. So we made a lot of progress, but we got a long way to go. And we're excited about it.
And this is one thing I need to tell you at this point in time, Chandler, and you must be very conscious and aware about the number of authors you're helping, but you're also helping so many entrepreneurs. Like for me, I have like role models for different areas of my life. When it comes to the publishing industry, it is you. So whenever we get stuck with something, right? Like our team meetings are not going on well, immediately I listen to one of the episodes from your podcast and I tweak it. Or if my company's culture is not going well, I immediately realize that, okay, maybe we should do the book club thing that Chandler is doing. So we've started doing that last year and it's been a huge, a huge thing as a part of our company. And next year we are planning to do these offshore retreats. So all these things that you're implementing in your business, you're kind enough to share it on your podcast. I mean, not many entrepreneurs do that, right? You could only be talking about writing, publishing, and marketing, but you also share the inside stories about how you are, focusing on your business and your mindset. So keep doing that, Chandler. And if you have to think about why I need to do this, please listen to this episode and you will know how you're impacting so many other businesses too. So before I let you go, what would be your final word of advice to all those aspiring authors out there who know that they have a book inside them, but they are just not taking that next step to go ahead and get it published?
Yeah, great question. I would say there's never going to be a perfect time to write your book, you're going to have to get started before you're ready. And so I'd encourage you to take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, as soon as this podcast is over, grab a blank sheet of paper, write your book topic in the middle of the page, set a timer for 15 minutes, and take 15 minutes to mind map everything that you can think of on the topic of this book. It's going to be a jumping off point for you. You'll start to realize all this stuff that you can write about. It'll be really helpful. If you want to learn more about that, you can dive into chapter 5 in my new book. It breaks down the whole mind mapping process, but that's the place to get started. You're going to have to get started before you're ready. There's never a good time to write a book. There's never this, I think a lot of times people think there's going to be this magical moment where they've got no job, no kids, no business, no responsibilities. But that's not going to happen. You're going to have to get started before you're ready. And there's never a better time than right now.
Absolutely. I still remember that mind mapping exercise that you taught. I did that back in the year 2015. At that time, I was a new mom. I had this little baby. So I used to wake up at 5 a.m. to write my book. And that mind mapping exercise, that one thing alone, gave me the confidence that I have something memeaningful to share with the world.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that again,
cool.
Chandler. So where can people go and find out more about you and published?
Yeah. So it's funny that you mentioned that. I just realized I use your mind map example, I think, in every webinar that I do.
Yeah, I've seen that. And it's such a humbling experience for me.
That's a fun example of one of the earliest examples of mind map success. So if people want to learn more about me or self-publishing school, first and best place to start is with my book, Published. We've talked about this. If you want the audiobook version, go to publishedbook.com/audible. This is Published, The Proven Path from Blank Page to 10,000 Copies Sold. This is really a roadmap for writing a great book that sells copies. And then on that note, we've created a special link for your audience. So it's publishedbook.com/Jyotsna. So JYOTSNA. And so the first 50 people that go to that link will get a free physical copy. Okay. Wow. So this is in the US only for shipping reasons, but we're not going to charge any shipping, any of that. We'll pay for everything. You just tell us where to ship it. Now, if you're outside of the US, you can go to that same link. And like I said, we won't send you a physical book, but we'll give you a free digital copy of the book. So for the first 50 people, if you want a physical copy, you can grab that there. And then lastly, if you're interested in learning more about self-publishing school and how we might be able to help, you can go to self-publishingschool.com/apply, book a call with my team. We're happy to chat with you and kind of map out goals and next steps for your book and see how we might be able to help.
Amazing, Chandler. Thank you for all those fantastic resources. I'm going to have all the links right below in the show notes. So thank you so much once again for coming on Author Success Show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.